Well, for now, Germany, Austria, Britain and others have just frozen any more asylum applications from Syrians. Joining me from London is columnist, author and broadcaster Esther Krakue. Esther, great to see you. I thought refugees, they just want a place to stay until it's safe to go home. So how many do you expect to actually go back to Syria?
Well, I would make a conservative guess of not even one. And the reason for that is because of international law. So legally, countries are not allowed to return refugees back to their countries even if they become safe. It's called refoulement, and it breaches international law. And the real crux of this issue is the fact that refugee status and granting asylum status to individuals is given out too freely and too readily. The reason why a lot of refugees won't go back to their countries even if they become safe is because they'll lose all benefits that they receive in their host countries, their now countries, which would either be Germany or the UK. Now, what Germany did after receiving 1.2 million Syrian refugees at the behest of Angela Merkel, much to the chagrin of much of the electorate, was they gave them visitor visas. And I think the UK should do something similar, having sort of temporary visitor visas, so that when the countries they come from are deemed safe, like places like Ukraine, for example, when the war ends, they can be returned without falling foul of international law, which is a complete headache, and has the support of an industrial charity complex with many highly paid, well-paid human rights lawyers at the likes of Keir Starmer. It should be, a normal expectation to expect people to return back to their countries when they become safe. But unfortunately, the way international law works and the way that you'll hear the media screaming racism, it's just not worth all the hassle. You just have to change the law. So you change the status with which these people come into these countries. And we have to remember that, there are significant risks with absorbing huge populations of people on a permanent basis. And it has, repercussions in terms of domestic politics. So, for example, Turkey, took in 3 million Syrian refugees, and that's had a huge impact on sort of domestic populist politics. The Germans, of course, took 1.2 million. The UK, now we have about 30,000 left. I think about 10,000 of those that came have returned since 2019. But they do have some significant ramifications. We have to remember here in the UK, since 1998, a quarter, 1 in 4 of all people convicted of terrorist offences here in the UK are from a refugee background, many of them coming from places like Syria and North Africa. Remember the Manchester bombings at the Ariana Grande concert a few years ago. That was someone who was of Libyan heritage. He was a refugee. So there are national security threats of just absorbing such huge populations from these kinds of conflict-ridden regions in the world.
Yeah, so this is the last time we're going to talk this year. I hope to see you back next year. And I've got to thank you for all your efforts here. Looking back over this year, how's Britain changed? I mean, I would have thought what you're talking about, the immigration issues become front and centre. And that's one of the reasons that the previous Conservative government got thrown out for, because it promised to do something about the borders. It failed, got chucked out. How has Britain changed?
Well, I can say that Britain is at a tipping point, and I think one of the instances this year that made that very clear were the Southport riots. I'm sure you remember the 3 girls that were brutally stabbed at a Taylor Swift dance class in Southport in North England this year, and people had just had enough. The riots became worldwide news because the subsequent governments have just refused to listen to the UK population. The Conservative government under David Cameron promised to bring immigration down to the tens of thousands. He didn't. That led to Brexit. Then Boris Johnson government really just blew the doors open. And in the last 2 years, immigration figures have been revised upwards. So we've had basically almost 2 million people in the last 2 years. It's completely unsustainable. And Keir Starmer now, his great reset speech last week, he didn't even mention immigration. He talked about, clean energy and the economy and all of this, and didn't even mention the big elephant in the room. So Britain is at a breaking point. And I think this is why you're seeing a resurgence of, the likes of Nigel Farage and his Reform Party. In the council elections next May, you're probably going to see a huge wave in Scotland and Wales for the Reform Party. But we have to wait until 2029 to really make the kind of change that's necessary in this country to stop this unsustainable wave of not only immigration, but declining public services and cultural issues as well. It's really quite significant. And unfortunately, we're going to be sort of the last in the world to have our sort of Trump moment, if you will, just because of where our elections
Can't wait till you stand for election anyway. Esther Krakue, thank you so much indeed for your time.